Good morning, Orlando. Tuesday morning here on the 50,000 watt front porch, where we update Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts. And our top stories this morning: March for Our Lives announces its next phase, and the Supreme Court rules in favor of a baker in a wedding cake case. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
And we're going to talk about that Supreme Court ruling. Was it a win for religious freedom? Was it a win for the First Amendment, freedom of speech? Well, we'll take your calls and talk about it next.
Good Tuesday morning at 6:02 on News Radio 102.5. The March for Our Lives movement continues.
Students all over the country are beginning to get up, rally, move in the right direction, and start to realize just how important it is for us to exercise our freedom.
A day after 4 Stoneman Douglas High School seniors killed in February's mass shooting were honored in an emotional graduation ceremony, student leader Cameron Caskey of the anti-gun violence effort announced the next phase of the movement. Starting June 15th in Chicago, the students will be going on a coast-to-coast bus tour this summer, encouraging young people to register to vote. They're planning about 50 stops in more than 20 states, along with a separate tour in Florida that will take stops in all 27 congressional districts. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to decorate a wedding cake for a gay couple. Christian Wagner for the Alliance for Defending Freedom represented Jack Phillips before the Supreme Court. She says the justices made the right call yesterday, adding the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was very biased against her client's religious beliefs.
This process was openly hostile to Jack because of his religious viewpoint, and that in and of itself was enough to render it unconstitutional under the Free Exercise Clause.
In a 7-2 ruling, the Supreme Court determined the process in which the commission made their decision against the baker was biased and unfair. However, that ruling did not say that business owners can refuse service to anyone simply due to their sexual preference. A case involving a gay couple turned away on religious grounds by a florist in Washington could go before the Supreme Court later this year.
Just so you know, we're going to have our attorney Jeff Kaufman on in the 8 o'clock hour to give his legal expertise on the ruling. This half hour, I want to take people's calls and see what they think about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because there's very divergent, a lot of surprises yesterday for legal scholars.
Yeah, because in the ruling was very narrow.
Yes.
So it really doesn't end the discussion.
No, it does not.
This.
And the Supreme Court wanted that to get across very clear. Yeah. This is just this case.
Yeah, so I'm curious what our attorney thinks about it.
All right, well, we'll have him on, and it'll be a good opportunity for listeners if they haven't had a chance to hear our legal brief segment that we do on Wednesday mornings at 8:40. If you like what you hear when we have attorney Jeff Kaufman on this morning, and you have a legal question that's going on in your life, you can text it to us, and we'll handle that tomorrow morning.
Sounds good.
All right.
One of my favorite segments, actually.
Is it really? Yeah, I know. He's a great guy, and he's awesome. You can just literally throw a word at him, and he'll take 10 minutes and just go.
Yep.
It really does. Hey, another big story that we had just touched on yesterday was the string of murders that was going on in Arizona. And 6 murders are actually being linked to a man who killed himself yesterday at a hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona. Police believe the suspect, Dwight Lamont Jones, intended to target people connected to his divorce years ago.
He had a divorce situation back in 2009 and 10. And during all of that time, he was related to all of the victims in some way. And
police say the killing spree started on Thursday with the death of psychiatrist Stephen Pitt. The next day, 2 paralegals were shot and killed, and another psychologist was found dead early Saturday. 2 more people were found dead in the nearby community of Fountain Hills. Scottsdale police investigators say ballistics linked the first 4 murders, while work is still underway to investigate the Fountain Hills deaths. Police say Jones died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound at a hotel as a SWAT team closed in on him.
Amazing. Yesterday, we thought they didn't have any leads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they were saying. We didn't know anything. And now, today, he's dead. I mean, give credit to the investigators for finding him so quickly.
Absolutely. Because yesterday, word was, that they still didn't know if all of the murders were connected. They assumed that they were, but it seemed like they had so little information. And in 24 hours to have this case all wrapped up is, like you said, kudos to the investigators. Yep. Hey, back here closer to home, heads up if you use SunPass. SunPass holders who need to replenish their accounts should do so before 7 o'clock tonight. That's because that's when a statewide prepaid toll program goes offline for system maintenance. Most SunPass services will be unavailable. However, transponders can still be used to pay for tolls. Those charges, though, will be submitted once the system comes back online, which is expected next Monday, June 11th at 9 a.m.
So when I first saw this story, I thought it meant the tolls were going to be free for a week or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
what
funny.
was I thinking?
I know. That's really funny.
Yeah,
that's funny. And finally, NASA's Exoplanet Travel Bureau website allows users to virtually tour 6 alien worlds. The website shows 360-degree images of the planets, which are outside of our solar system. The Bureau also offers posters of all 6 planets. Most of the destinations featured on the site were found by NASA's Kepler Space Telescope. This telescope has discovered over 2,300 exoplanets since 2009. Is it me, or does it sound like it's a travel brochure and they're trying to encourage people to visit?
Maybe.
Maybe. You have a list of people you'd like to visit 6 exoplanets?
No.
No?
I don't know.
I do. WFLA News Time at 6:07. This is a cool story. Read about an Iraq War veteran saving a Wyoming trooper from a man who was attacking him. You can get the details at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando with Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 102.5.
Whew, a lot of news happened yesterday.
Yeah, it sure did.
So we're going to try to get through it all. The biggest news of the day, I think, was the Supreme Court ruling over the case on whether this cake shop owner has to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding. A lot of different opinions on this, a lot of different aspects to the ruling, and we want to get your take as well. So you can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. Deborah Roberts will give us the news throughout the morning. Paul is here producing, and Steph is screening your calls. It is 6:08 here on Good Morning Orlando.
I think this is a dangerous opinion because it will allow others to say, my religious beliefs prohibit me from dealing with women or Italians or African Americans, and they will base it on the logic in this case.
So that was Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox News yesterday. He believes that this is a dangerous opinion. I disagree with him. What do you think? 407-916-5400, text to 23680. So I had a texter ask me, why did I say this is a narrow ruling? Because it was 7-2. 7 justices ruled in favor of the cake shop owner. Well, it wasn't that part was narrow. It was the ruling itself which was narrow in what it applies to. And that's what I want to get to. I want to straighten out some of the details here. In a 7-2 decision by the Supreme Court yesterday, they sided with a Christian baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay marriage. The baker is Jack Phillips, who owns the Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado. Back in 2012, Charlie Craig and David Mullins wanted to have a custom cake made for their upcoming wedding. Jack refused to make it because of his religious beliefs, since it was a gay wedding. But, and this hasn't been reported a whole lot, the cake shop owner also said that they could buy other cakes in the shop. They were welcome to buy any other cakes in the shop, and he was also going to help them, tell them where else they could go to get the type of cake they wanted.
I think that's the most important part of the whole thing that people are overlooking, is that he didn't just say, no, we don't do cakes. We're not going to do your cake because you're gay. He said, I won't do that particular thing on the cake, but you can have any cake you want. You know?
So it wasn't that he was refusing them service completely. It was that he wasn't going to make them a custom cake, custom for a gay wedding. So what did the Supreme Court rule? They ruled in favor of the cake shop owner this time. And this is why I said it's narrow. it did not settle the dispute completely. It settles it in this one instance for specific reasons. The court only ruled that Jack Phillips was treated unfairly by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. So it didn't make a permanent ruling saying all cases like this. It didn't set a precedent. Let's put it that way. It just said in this case, we're ruling in favor of Jack Phillips because the Colorado Civil Rights Commission treated him unfairly. They were openly hostile towards his religious beliefs. Now, Justice Kennedy was the one who gave the opinion on the ruling, and this is what he said about it. He said the neutral and respectful consideration to which Phillips was entitled was compromised here. The Civil Rights Commission's treatment of his case has some elements of a clear and impermissible hostility toward the sincere religious beliefs that motivated his objection. The outcome of cases like this and other circumstances must await further elaboration in the courts, all in the context of recognizing that these disputes must be resolved with tolerance, without undue disrespect to sincere religious beliefs, and without subjecting gay persons to indignities when they seek goods and services in an open market. That's what I meant when I said it's a narrow decision, because Justice Kennedy says there specifically that the outcome of cases like this in other circumstances must await further elaboration in the courts. So I'm going to give my opinion on this. We are also going to hear from the lawyer of the cake shop owner and the gay couple that was refused service to have this custom cake made. And we're going to take your calls as well. Do you think the court got it right? Do you think the court went far enough with this case? And do you think this is settled now? Or is it just the beginning of this debate? 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. In the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to talk with our legal expert attorney, Jeff Kaufman, on this. And, of course, we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Jack Phillips, who is the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado. Now, Jack Phillips did not react to this yesterday. He had his lawyer speak for him, and this is what his lawyer, Kristen Wagner, said about that decision. Play cut one for me, Paul.
Today's decision means our fight against discrimination and unfair treatment will continue. We have always believed that in America you should not be turned away from a business open to the public because of who you are.
So, sorry about that. I got the order mixed up. That was actually Charlie and David reacting to the decision. That was the gay couple that wanted the wedding cake and did not get it. They lost this case, and that's why they said right there that the fight is not over. Now, here is the reaction from the lawyer of Jack Phillips talking about this decision.
The court's decision today makes very clear that the government must respect Jack Phillips' beliefs about marriage. If we want to have freedom for ourselves, we have to extend it to those with whom we disagree.
All right, so 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 with your reaction. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Kevin in Melbourne. Kevin, what's your take on this?
Hey, how's it going, Yaffee? I don't know all everything about this particular ruling. I just know that I'm glad for the ruling, and I've been following this case for a while. I think it goes back 5 years or more when it all started.
And why are you glad?
It's too bad that.
Why do you like the ruling?
I like the ruling because it was ruled in favor of Jack Phillips. That's why I like the ruling.
Okay.
Now, it shouldn't have had to go this far. It really shouldn't have had to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Other courts before this should have decided in favor of Jack Phillips, in my opinion.
Okay.
And because this was all started, these two homosexuals did this not for the purpose of trying to say that they're being discriminated against. They did it for the purpose they knew that this man was a Christian man and he was going to refuse service. He was going to refuse to make a wedding cake for them. They did it on purpose to force him to. That's why they did it.
All right, Kevin. All right. I appreciate your call. So here's my take on this case. I believe the court made the right decision in this case, but I believe it did not go far enough. They based this off the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment, establishment of religion. But really, this is a freedom of speech issue, in my opinion. Forcing the owner to make the cake not only violates his religious liberty, but I believe it would be compelled speech. He is an artist, and as an artist, you can't force him to make a product, a custom product, which would be an extension of his freedom of speech, that he doesn't want to make and that he believes is against his religious beliefs. Now, I'm not the only one who's saying this. Justice Clarence Thomas, in a concurring opinion, basically said the same thing about this case. This is what he said. He says, because the court's decision vindicates Phillips' right to free exercise, it seems that religious liberty has lived to fight another day. But in future cases, the freedom of speech could be essential to preventing him from being used to stamp out every vestige of dissent and vilify Americans who are unwilling to assent to the new orthodoxy. That's what I believe. I tend to be very libertarian on these issues, actually. I believe certain businesses do have a right to discriminate, but in this case specifically, I believe he had a right to say no because he should not be forced, should not be compelled to make something as an artist that's against his religious beliefs, because that's compelled speech. Paul, looks like you have an opinion on this as well.
Well, that was one of the things that they spoke in detail and at length about when they were considering the case originally. At what level is a baker's service considered art, and at what level is it considered, providing food service or retail? And it looks like, they've and they
didn't rule on that.
No, they didn't rule on that, because what they really ruled on, what they really ruled on was what the state of Colorado was doing in this case, more than anything else.
They were too hostile towards him.
Yeah,
Colorado. So very, very interesting stuff. There is something that we have to consider here, though. If we're going to be consistent, let's say I'm a Christian and I go into a bake shop that's run by an atheist. I should not expect that cake shop owner to make a Christian cake, a custom Christian cake. A lot of Christians would be uncomfortable with that, but I believe that atheist bake shop owner would have the right to say no, because I would not want to compel him, to force him to, as an artist, to make a product for me that's against his beliefs. So I think it actually goes both ways, and we would have to be consistent on that. And I think that's one aspect that a lot of people are not thinking of.
Nobody wants to be consistent. It doesn't apply to both sides.
Yeah, but that's something we have to think about as well. And me, being libertarian on these issues, I would be perfectly okay with that. I really think the free market works a lot of this stuff out anyway. I think most cake shop owners are going to make the cake because they want the business. And that's just the fact of the matter. And competition will force others to do it as well. So we're going to talk more about this in the 8 o'clock hour. We have Deborah Roberts, who's going to come in right now and update the latest news. It's going to talk about the March for Our Lives, announcing its next phase. And the legal fight over smoking medical marijuana continues. It's 6:30 here on Good Morning Orlando. So yesterday on the show, Deb, I talked a little bit about the fight over medical marijuana and smoking it. And you have a story about how that fight seems to be continuing. And you're going to get to that in a second. You have some other news for us as well.
Yeah, because it turns out the March for Our Lives student movement announced their summer program, Road to Change.
A 2-month summer tour around the country where we will go from city to city, state to state, and connect with community to community, making sure we are going to harness and energy the passion we witnessed on March 24th and turn it into action.
Student leader Cameron Caskey of the anti-gun violence effort announced the next phase starting June 15th in Chicago. The students will be going on a coast-to-coast bus tour this summer, encouraging young people to register to vote. They're planning about 50 stops in more than 20 states, along with a separate tour here in Florida that will make stops in all 27 congressional districts. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. As Mike alluded to, yes, the fight over medical marijuana and smoking continues. Lawyers for two women who want the right to smoke their medical marijuana are asking a Tallahassee judge to overturn the state law that limits them to vaping, oils, and edibles. Gainesville attorney and former Florida House Speaker John Mills says the judge already decided in their favor, but the ruling hasn't taken effect yet.
The state, because it's the state, gets an automatic stay of Judge Beaver's original order. So this is to set aside that stay and to allow her order to go into effect.
Lawyers for the state claim that's a problem because people might get the wrong idea and start lighting up thinking it's suddenly legal. But Mills says they're just blowing smoke. And finally, George H.W. Bush is out of a Maine hospital. A spokesperson tweeted yesterday the former president received terrific care while being treated for low blood pressure. The 93-year-old spent about a week at Southern Maine Health Care due to the condition. The spokesperson also says Bush is thankful for the many good wishes he received while in the hospital. And you can get these stories and more at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando with Yaffee continues now with Gina Cervetti and the Bloomberg Business Reports.
Yes, and Gina is joining us from the Bloomberg Newsroom in New York City. How are you this morning, Gina?
I'm well, Michael. How about yourself?
Pretty good, and it appears that the stock market, at least the futures market, is doing well also.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The futures indicate a higher Wall Street open after a higher close yesterday. That was the second straight session of gains. We had the Dow jumping 178 points to 24,814. The S&P was up 12, about 0.4%, closing at 2747. The Nasdaq surged to a new record closing high, up 52 points at 7606. We had tech and retailing among the best performers, and retailers were leading the way in the Bloomberg Orlando Index, which gained 0.7% yesterday. Today we'll watch for an update on the services sector. We also get this JOLTS report. That's a look at job openings and labor turnover.
All right, and ever since Twitter went public, they've been trying to prove to their investors that they're worth the money, and they're doing another step towards proving that this week. What are they up to?
Yeah, they moved forward with another step yesterday to put the era behind it when investors were losing a lot of money in an action that forces index funds with trillions of dollars in assets to own Twitter. The social media company will replace Monsanto in the S&P 500 prior to the start of trading on Thursday. Monsanto, the company name, is going away after Bayer bought that company, and that is a deal that's expected to close on Thursday.
All right, and the company Qualcomm out with a new chip aimed at connecting PCs to cell networks?
That's right. This is something that most of us may not do because it costs money, but a lot of the computers that you buy have Wi-Fi on them, but they don't necessarily allow you to connect to a cell phone network. And Qualcomm is the biggest smartphone chip maker around, but it also has this new chip that it says Samsung is already buying, and this is part of a push to get its mobile technology into the computing market. This is a market currently dominated by Intel. U.S. consumers who buy machines with the Qualcomm chip starting today, in fact, will get free data through Sprint until the end of the year. Samsung joins Asus Tech, HP, and Lenovo in selling computers that offer connections to cell phone networks.
Interesting stuff. That's actually a good idea on their part. So the Army has a high-tech solution to monitoring the health of their troops. How are they doing that?
Well, they're planning to develop a wearable health sensor. The Medical Command of the Army has issued a preliminary request for project proposals to modify an existing sensor to this end. The project includes testing of this prototype device in a lab and then in the field, and designed for manufacturing and setup costs so they can monitor the health of their troops with these sensors that they would wear.
All right, Gina Cervetti from New York City, always good at telling us what's going on in the world of business. And we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks, Gina.
Thank you, Michael.
So President Trump had some more controversy on Twitter yesterday. Of course he did. He tweeted something out, calling something in particular unconstitutional. What was he talking about? Where did he get this idea from? Well, I'll tell you next. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA.
It's a discredited disgrace. It's not even constitutional in a lot of people's opinion, in my opinion, too.
So he says it's a disgrace and it's unconstitutional. That was President Trump yesterday on a conference call to some supporters. What was he talking about there? Well, it goes back to something he tweeted yesterday. Yes, Trump once again caused controversy, caused debate on Twitter. Not very surprising there. This is what he said. He said, the appointment of the special counsel is totally unconstitutional. He's got unconstitutional in all caps, so pay attention. Despite that, we play the game because I, unlike the Democrats, have done nothing wrong. That's what he said there. You know, I tend to agree with Trump that a lot of this is just a political game, and both sides are playing it well right now. That being said, I want to focus on the other part of his tweet. Where did Trump get the idea that the Mueller probe is unconstitutional?
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk about the use of capital letters in unconstitutional.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Trump's grammar usage, that's a whole nother show there, Paul. But where did he get the idea that the whole Mueller probe is unconstitutional? Well, believe it or not, this is something that was brought up weeks ago, and it was brought up by Stephen Calabrese, who is a member of the Federalist Society. It was also spread around by conservative talk show host Mark Levin. He's the one who really got it out there and got a lot of people talking about this. In fact, I have some audio of Mark Levin when he was on Hannity a couple weeks ago explaining why this probe to him is unconstitutional. Paul, if you could play with the Levin cut for me, talking about why this probe is unconstitutional.
He's not an inferior employee like an administrative assistant or anything of that sort. He is a principal officer. And under the Appointments Clause of the United States Constitution, Article 2, Mr. Rosenstein usurped the authority of the President of the United States to nominate whomever he wants as a prosecutor, and Mr. Rosenstein usurped the power of the United States Senate, which has the control of reconfirmation or not. Mr. Mueller is serving unconstitutionally in violation of the Appointments Clause of the Constitution because of the way Rosenstein appointed him, because of expanding his authority, because Mr. Mueller has expanded his own authority with these 4 now assistant United States attorneys.
So basically, Mark Levin is making the argument, it's the same argument Stephen Calabrese was making, that Mueller is acting as a superior officer. By the way he's acting, by where the probe is going, he's saying Mueller's a superior officer. Well, if he's a superior officer, that means he would have to be appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, which he was not. So Mark Levin and others are saying then it's unconstitutional, and anyone who is subpoenaed by Mueller should ignore the subpoena. It's a very interesting argument, but I wanted to give you the other side of the argument as well. I happened to catch this by Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox News. This was a couple weeks ago. He was on Fox and Friends First, that TV show, and he was asked specifically about this. This was even before Trump tweeted this out. And he had an interesting take on this, disagreeing with Levin a little bit. And here's what Napolitano said about it.
No, that flies in the face of a Supreme Court opinion directly on point, which says he's an inferior officer of the United States. An officer of the United States has no boss. An inferior officer has a boss. His boss is Rod Rosenstein. And because he's an inferior officer, he doesn't have to be appointed by the president or confirmed by the Senate. This is a very late in the day argument because this ruling that is just described to you is 30 years old. That's how well settled the law is. So those who are saying his office is illegitimate are following the dissent in the case. The dissent was written by my late, beloved, dear friend, Justice Scalia. But the majority rules.
So I really like and respect Mark Levin. I've read all of his books. I've listened to him for years. I think he is a great defender of the Constitution. That being said, I think I have to side with the judge on this and against Trump on this. The main reason why, and Judge Napolitano brought it up there, I have been very critical of the power of the special counsel. I have been very critical of the power of a lot of special counsels out there, wondering if we really should be doing this. That being said, and the judge brought this up, the special counsel was still appointed by Rosenstein, by the Deputy Attorney General. Because he was appointed by Rosenstein, Rosenstein is still his boss. And because Rosenstein is still his boss, Rosenstein can direct that investigation. He could end that investigation if he wanted to. That means Mueller would have to be an inferior officer. A superior officer would be his own boss and only reports to the president. Mueller is not only reporting to the president, he's reporting to the Deputy Attorney General. That means he's not a superior officer. That means he's an inferior officer. And according to that Supreme Court ruling, it's not unconstitutional. I understand where both sides are coming from on this. I think it's an interesting intellectual argument. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anyway, because you would have to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court would have to overturn a previous ruling, and I really think that's a long shot. So this is good at firing up the base. This is smart politically. By Trump putting this out there, it's smart politically. I will give him that. And Mark Levin, what they're doing is smart politically because it's sort of, they're controlling the terms of the debate. They're firing up the base. But I'm not sure I can go as far as what Levin is saying here because I think Andrew Napolitano makes a really good point. What do you think? 407-916-5400, text to 23680, where standard message and data rates apply. It's 6:51 here on Good Morning Orlando. So I just want you to all know where I'm coming from. I'm a conservative. I'm a limited government guy. If you didn't know that, I mean, you should have known that by now. Most stories I'm going to come to the perspective that I am a believer in limited government. I am a believer in limiting the power of, say, the president, of, say, the bureaucracy, of interfering with the free market. I don't like when we do that too much. That being said, from that perspective, there's something that President Trump is doing that concerns me a little bit. It seems that he wants to kind of bail out the coal industry and the nuclear power industry. According to Bloomberg, President Donald Trump ordered his energy secretary to take immediate action to stem power plant closures, arguing that a decline in coal and nuclear electricity is putting the nation's security at risk. Now, that alone wouldn't bother me so much, depending how he would do it. So let's say he directs the energy secretary to get rid of some of the regulations, streamline things so they can make it easier to do business. I'd be totally fine with that because I'm a limited government guy. This is the part that concerns me, though, and should concern any conservative. Here it is. It says the department's strategy outlined in a memo obtained by Bloomberg News would use authority granted under a pair of federal laws to establish a strategic electric generation reserve and compel grid operators to buy electricity from at-risk plants. It says the steps are necessary to protect national security. So he's making the same argument he made for tariffs, national security. Could you imagine if Obama did something like this? Conservatives would be up in arms saying this is way too much intervention in the free market. In fact, Obama did do something like this with all of his subsidizing of green energy. He would constantly force the coal companies, overregulate them, and then try to force other energy companies to use more renewable energy. And conservatives like me were upset because we said renewable energy, if it can't compete in the market, then we shouldn't have it. Well, the same needs to be true for coal and nuke power plants. The reason why a lot of them are going down is because natural gas is a lot cheaper right now. So they're moving to that. But I don't like that the president, using national security, is interrupting the market this way. I think it's a little too much. I wanted to get that in there. It's not getting a whole lot of attention. But as a guy who believes in the free market, I think President Trump's going too far here. All right, Deborah Roberts is going to update the latest news at the top of the hour, including the March for Our Lives gun protest is continuing, and she has more. It's 7 o'clock on Good Morning Orlando. Good morning, Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning. March for Our Lives announces its next phase, and the former Broward deputy is haunted by the school shooting. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
So that former Broward resource officer, Scot Peterson, as Deb said, is breaking his silence. We're going to go over what he had to say next.
And good Tuesday morning at 7:03 on News Radio 102.5. March for Our Lives, the organization formed after February's mass shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School, is moving forward. Student leaders held a news conference yesterday morning in Parkland, where March for Our Lives leader Cameron Caskey announced the students intend to harness the anti-gun violence passion displayed at March for Our Lives events across the country on March 24th and turn it into action.
We're going to be making more than 75 stops nationwide. We will have a separate tour in Florida, and we'll have 50 planned stops in over 20 states, including Iowa, Texas, California, South Carolina, Connecticut, and so many more.
Sunday, the Stoneman Douglas graduation ceremonies featured a surprise commencement speaker, Tonight Show host Jimmy Fallon. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Meanwhile, the former Florida school resource officer, labeled by some as a coward after the deadly shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School, says he's haunted by that day. Scot Peterson resigned after video showed the deputy never went in the building where a former student was gunning down fellow students and teachers. Speaking on NBC's Today Show, Peterson said he would have entered the school building if he knew the shooter was inside.
At the point, if I would have known, knowing what I know today, I would have been in that building in a heartbeat. Like I said, it was my kids. It's just I didn't know. And I rack my brain. I go, why?
Peterson has defended his actions to the Washington Post as well, insisting that he didn't know if the attack was going on inside or outside. Peterson said he radioed in the shooting, tried to lock down the school and clear out the kids. Peterson still refers to the Stoneman Douglas students as, quote, my kids.
I want to take calls from people listening because I know a lot of people out there, including Bud, thought the cop was a coward.
I did too. I really did too.
Yeah. So do you buy this explanation by him, or do you think he's just making excuses? 407-916-5400.
Well, the father of one Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting victim isn't showing any sympathy for the deputy assigned to protect the school. Fred Gutenberg lost his daughter in the shooting, and he says Peterson has no right referring to the victims as his kids. Gutenberg tells CBS 4 News Peterson didn't go to a single funeral or mourn a single child, and he's accusing Peterson of going on a pity party tour to portray himself as a victim.
I'm not sure that's a fair criticism, not going to the funerals.
I thought the same thing when I read it, because he would have been shouted out if he had tried to attend any of them.
There would have been a big distraction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I could completely understand. He's like, I don't want to be a distraction.
Exactly. And he doesn't want to make it about him. And who's to say he didn't mourn the students?
Right. He says he did. He says he's haunted by it.
Right. So, I think, but again, that's a father who lost a child.
Oh, yeah. I can't criticize the father too much. I just think saying, oh, he didn't go to the funerals, I just don't think it's a fair criticism.
Yeah, I don't either. Closer to home, Markeith Lloyd's lawyer believes the prosecutor may have a conflict of interest. Lloyd's lawyer is Roger Whedon, and he's filed a motion this weekend to get State Attorney Brad King dismissed from the case. The Orlando Sentinel reports Whedon claims King has a conflict because King sits on a state board that oversees funding of expert witnesses for Lloyd and other low-income defendants. Lloyd is accused of killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend and Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. And finally, First Lady Melania Trump is thanking Gold Star military families, those who have lost someone serving in the military. Mrs. Trump, along with the president, welcomed 40 families to the White House Monday night. It was the First Lady's first public appearance in over 3 weeks since she was hospitalized last month for a kidney issue. In a statement, Mrs. Trump said it was a solemn reminder of the debt owed to the men and women in uniform, President Trump opened the dinner joking about the speculation in the media about Melania's whereabouts. WFLA News Time at 7:07, and you can read about the Supreme Court ruling in favor of a baker and a same-sex wedding case online at 1025wfla.com. The second hour of Good Morning Orlando with Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
So we're going to hear more from the former resource officer of the Stoneman Douglas High School, Scot Peterson. He's breaking his silence. He's talking about what he went through, basically saying that he would have entered the school had he known the shooter was there, saying he didn't know the shooter was in there. What do you think about that, or do you still think he's just a coward and is trying to make excuses? 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. Got a note from Deb in just a second. Then we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA.
A deputy arrived at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in.
So that was Sheriff Scott Israel. We all remember that day when the sheriff came out and made that announcement at the press conference saying that the school resource officer took a position outside the school and never went in the building where the shooting occurred. Well, we haven't really heard too much from Scot Peterson, who was the resource officer who did not go into the building. We haven't heard too much from him since this happened. We've heard from his lawyers more than anything. Well, he is speaking out now, breaking his silence, and he went on the Today Show, and the whole interview airs this morning, but they previewed some of it, and talked about why he didn't go in the building and how he's haunted by this. This is some of what he said.
You know, in this really important moment, you missed it.
I have to. I live with that. You know, how could I not? I mean, I'm human. I mean, in the perfect world, I would have said, yeah, I know there was a shooter in there. Let me go to the third floor, find this person. You know, if I would have, at the point, if I would have known, I mean, knowing what I know today, I would have been in that building in a heartbeat. I mean, like I said, it was my kids. I mean, it's just I didn't know. And I mean, I rack my brain. I go, why?
So this is some other comments by him talking about this. He said, I only remember hearing 2 or 3 shots. I know there were more, but that's all I heard. He also said, if I heard more shots, I might have known where to find him. If I knew where he was, I could have gone in. He says, I was looking for him. I just didn't know. Why didn't I go in? He says. So his main excuse is that he did not know where the shots were coming from and did not know to go into the building. He does admit, though, that he bears a lot of the responsibility, saying, it was my job and I didn't find him. What do you think about this? I have to tell you, looking at the video and hearing some of the police blotter, I don't understand why he didn't go into the building. He should have went into the building unless he was scared, unless he, decided, this is my training. I should have been taking up a position outside of the building.
So I'm going to start a little controversy by the way I say this, but he didn't go into the building for the same reason people get shot in the side of the road on a traffic stop. Because he's afraid. We have too many police officers right now that are scared of their jobs.
So you think he was too scared to go in?
Absolutely.
All right.
I absolutely think he was too scared to go in. I think he froze, which is why he can't remember some of the things that happened, and he just panicked.
All right. We have a lot of callers, it looks like, and texters that agree with you. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Leon. Leon, what's your take on this?
I'd like to address you Monday morning quarterbacks that have never been shot.
Okay.
I'm a combat veteran of Vietnam. I was wounded 4 times, got 2 Purple Hearts, and a few other honors. I'm going to tell you, you don't have a whole lot of time to think about something when you're under fire. If that man, I want to just say, I'm not saying he was right. I'm saying you might want to give him the benefit of the doubt, and you might want to get out there and get under fire yourself before you start pontificating about what he should have done and what he should not have done.
Okay. So Leon is trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
But no, we don't have to go and get shot before we pontificate. We weren't trained in that area. We weren't trained about what happens when you're shot. We aren't trained with firearms. We weren't trained about being around that kind of environment. So, no, we don't have to do that.
Yeah, that was one thing that Sheriff Scott Israel said when this all happened. He said it is the officer's duty in that situation. They are trained to go in and take out the shooter. Let's take another call here. Let's go to Paul in Apopka. Paul, what do you think about this?
I think he's lying, for one. When the shooting went on, he told dispatch to tell the other officers who were arriving to stay back from the building, and not to go in. If he didn't believe the shooting was going on in the building, why would he tell them to stay back from the building?
Right.
He obviously
That's a good
knew
point.
the shooting was going on. That.
And
as far as I'm a combat veteran too, I was on the USS Princeton. I had 3 2,000-pound mines go off under my ship. Everybody on my ship did their job, and we were under fire. And I don't understand not doing your job when you're under fire. You just do what you're supposed to do. That's it.
Gotcha, Paul. I mean, he makes a really good point. I mean, I remember that the officers, not the sheriff's office, but the local police officers, when they got there, they were shocked that the sheriff's deputies did not go into the building. They could not understand it. In fact, Scott Peterson never went into the building. Even after the shooting was over, he didn't go into the building. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I have some more thoughts on this, though. We're going to take more calls as well. It's 7:20 on Good Morning Orlando. So we're talking about the former school resource officer at Stoneman Douglas High School, Scott Peterson, who is now breaking his silence, talking about why he did not enter the building, why he never found the shooter, why he did not engage the shooter that ended up killing 17 people. Another thing he said, and I'm getting all this from the Orlando Sentinel that had an extensive piece on this, he said, "It's haunting. I've cut that day up 1,000 ways with a million different what-if scenarios, but the bottom line is I was there to protect, and I lost 17. So we're getting a lot of calls and texts on this, whether we should give him the benefit of the doubt or we should just criticize him for being a coward. Let's take another call on this. Let's go to Jack in Orlando. Jack, what's your take on this?
Hey, good morning. Pretty much a lot of people covered what I was going to say, but I will just give you, first of all, he knew that the shooter was inside because he was told to go. He was told about the shooting, number one. Number two, when you look at the video, he's not looking towards the outside. He's looking towards the inside of the school. So he knew that the shooter was inside. When the sheriffs came in, he tried to stop the sheriffs from coming in. And the worst part of it is that he could have gone inside and stopped maybe some of the killings. That was his job. His job is to protect the students, not to be outside. But with that being said, I will tell you this. I don't blame him because maybe his heart was not set up on this. Maybe he didn't say, it's going to come into like one of these days I have to put my life on the line. And when it came to it, he just froze and panicked. And I was just looking for, a way out. But I think that giving him the benefit of the doubt is the human thing to do, but he was wrong. And he was lying.
All right,
That's my
Jack.
take.
Jack, you bring up a really interesting point, I think, if you recall. When we talk about blame, who do we blame? There's really only one person that we really blame, and that's the shooter. We want to throw a lot of hate towards Scott Peterson and others, but really our hate should be focused at the shooter. I understand that situations on the ground can be a lot different than our preconceived notion, than our perception, but I tend to agree with a lot of these callers that he should have went in. He should have went into the building. That being said, I don't hate Scot Peterson. I don't understand what good hating him does. Do we really need more hate in this situation? Maybe we should try and forgive him. I know that's the Christian side of me talking. And I know that's like impossible for a lot of people to do, but maybe we should try to forgive him. I don't know, but hate doesn't do a lot of good, but that doesn't mean we can't criticize him for not doing the right thing. Let's take one more call here. Let's go to John in Castleberry. John, what's your take?
Hey, Yaffee, listen, the officer did the best he could. Everybody's talking, well, we should have done this, you should have done that. He's got 2 clips on his belt. He's got 1 clip in the gun. He doesn't know how many shooters are in there. He doesn't know how many weapons they have. The best thing is to wait for backup, go in and force. That's the best he did. I don't even know why he's worried about what people think. He did the best he could. Everybody's, oh, I did this, I did that. Nobody's ever been in a shooting. You've never been in a shooting, have you?
Me, no, thank God.
Okay, exactly. Nobody knows, when you hear gunshot, oh, yeah, go in there and for the chief to make a comment like that was unbelievable. He's a coward. He's not a coward. He did the best he could. He's got 2 clips and 1 in the gun. He doesn't know how many shooters are in there, what type of weapons. I mean, the guy, the shooter, had all sorts of ammunition. Am I right, sir?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, John, I appreciate your call. The only criticism I would say of that is before Columbine, you would have been right. Because before Columbine, they were trained to take up a position outside. But because of what happened at Columbine, they're trained now, no matter what they have, to go in. That's their job. Even if they're outnumbered, even if they're outgunned, they're told it's your job.
And not only that,
because of what happened at Columbine.
You can't say staying outside is the best. You can't say that's the best he could do. There's no universe where that's the absolute best that he could have possibly done.
Right. All right, Deborah Roberts is joining me in the studio right now. She's going to talk about the latest news at 7:30 on Good Morning Orlando. So, Deb, how long ago was Hurricane Sandy when that hit up north?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say 2012.
2012?
7 years ago. 6 years ago.
Wow, because you have an amazing story that deals with Hurricane Sandy that happened years ago.
Yeah, it really does prove that the hip bone is indeed connected to the leg bone.
So you're going to get to that in a sec.
Yes.
But you have some other news for us as well.
Which is the announcement that the March for Our Lives movement continues.
Students all over the country are beginning to get up, rally, move in the right direction, and start to realize just how important it is for us to exercise our freedom.
Starting June 15th in Chicago, the students will be going on a coast-to-coast bus tour this summer, encouraging young people to register to vote. They're planning about 50 stops in more than 20 states, along with a separate tour here in Florida that will make stops in all 27 congressional districts. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. All right, here's that amazing story. 2 weeks ago, a resident of France contacted a New Jersey marketing department regarding a Diane Turton realtor sign that washed up on the beaches of France.
Wow.
The signage was lost during Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and was discovered by Hans Frank on the beaches of Bordeaux, France. The Diane Turton Realtors Wall Office owned the sign, which was lost from one of their, try not to laugh, waterfront listings during Hurricane Sandy. They say having their signage wash up in France on the beach truly proves that Diane Turton Realtors is a global real estate company.
They didn't lie about the waterfront listing either.
No, they did not. But that's not the only amazing one. A New York girl's message in a bottle has reached someone in Morocco.
Really?
Yeah. Shiloh Kokar of Long Island threw a message in a bottle overboard on a cruise ship back in 2015. That bottle has been found by a fisherman in Morocco on, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Plage Blanche or White Beach. Shiloh included her dad's email in the letter, and her dad recently received an email from Ayoub Elbaz. He's the Moroccan man whose father, Hassan, found the bottle. And what's Really cool about this, the two families have been corresponding ever since.
Oh, that's cool.
And hope to one day meet up.
In Morocco.
In Morocco or in New York.
An excuse to go to Morocco.
Or an excuse to go to New York. Yeah, exactly. That's what I would rather do. All right, this is the world's largest freshwater pearl has been sold for $374,000. The Sleeping Lion pearl, which was once owned by Catherine the Great, was sold Thursday in the Netherlands. The uniquely shaped pearl, which resembles a lion, was most likely formed at the beginning of the 18th century in China.
Wow.
The pearl weighs about 4 ounces and is almost 3 inches long.
I'm kind of surprised it didn't go for more.
I kind of am as well, and I'm thinking 4 ounces of whatever for $374,000. Wow.
That's over $100,000 an ounce.
Yes. And finally, a New York couple is cashing in a huge lottery ticket he bought while just trying to get change. William Williams and Michelle Concepcion were simply trying to get change from CNN Liquor in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So what do? He bought a $5 million fortune lottery ticket for $20 so he could make change for a $100 bill.
Oh, no. Nice.
Williams said he needed to make change to buy perfume. Good man. And was shocked upon learning of his big win. The couple says they plan to use their money to help family members open up a motorbike shop.
And hopefully he'll stop buying perfume where you can buy lottery tickets.
That's true. Up your standards a little bit now.
Hey,
you can.
He can't blame it on the fact that he doesn't have enough money.
Right.
You know, now he can afford to go to the department store.
Exactly.
To get a nice bottle of perfume.
Now he's going to be needing to make change for $1,000 bills or something, too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Do they have that $1,000 bills?
Yeah, I don't know. I have never seen one.
Yeah, you and I have never seen one.
It's
so
kind
what
of
do we know?
like Yeti.
You guys don't have $1,000 bills at home?
No. In fact, I don't know.
Man.
Do they even have a $1,000 bill?
I don't know either. I work over here. What are you talking about?
Exactly. We're going to have to go on the third floor to the salespeople whose cars are not held. Yeah, exactly. Their cars are not held together with tape. Yeah, but I would like to know if there is a $1,000 bill.
I think there was. I don't think it's issued like continuously, but I think there was one.
Wow.
I have to look that up.
Like I said, it's kind of like the Yeti for me. I've never seen it. Probably never will. Never going to see Bigfoot.
Discontinued in 1969.
Wow.
Who's on it?
The Treasury Department and the Fed discontinued $500 bills, $1,000 bills, $5,000 bills, $10,000 bills, and $100,000 bills.
All bills we will never, ever see.
Yep.
Do we know who was on the bill, the $1,000 bill?
Let me find out who's on it.
Because that was wow.
Yeah, we're waiting. This is breaking news.
Grover Cleveland.
Grover Cleveland. All right.
Good stuff. All right.
Bring
you,
back
Deb.
Grover. You're welcome. See you with the serious stuff at 8.
Yep. All right. And we have more calls on Scott Peterson speaking out about why he did not go in and confront the shooter at Stoneman Douglas High School. We'll take more of those calls and texts next. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLN. So the reason I have that music playing is there was a tweet by President Trump where he said this: the Philadelphia Eagles football team was invited to the White House. Unfortunately, only a small number of players decided to come, and we canceled the event. Staying in the locker room for the playing of our national anthem is as disrespectful to our country as kneeling. Sorry. So he's not even happy with the new NFL regulations, which is really interesting. So he's canceling that meeting. If you want to react to that, you can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. We're still taking calls as well on the fact that Scott Peterson, who was the school resource officer at Stoneman Douglas High School when the shooting occurred, he did not go into the building and confront the shooter. Instead, he set up a perimeter outside, and some of the chatter kind of shows that he told others to stay outside. And when the local police department got there, they were shocked that the sheriff's deputies did not go in. So Scot Peterson has come out and he is saying, look, I would have gone in if I knew where the shooting was coming from. I didn't know. At first he thought it was firecrackers. Then he thought he heard shots, but only a couple of shots. And he didn't know where it was coming from, and so on and so forth.
I didn't hear the firecrackers part before.
Yeah, originally, like when he first heard something, he thought it was firecrackers, went towards the sound, went towards the building, and then realized, oh, this is probably gunshots. But he says that he thought it was maybe coming from the roof or coming from outside the building or whatever. He didn't know it was coming from inside the building. Some of the police chatter kind of contradicts him on that. So we'll see. But we have a lot of callers on this, and I want to get to them. Let's go to Eric in Edgewater. Eric, what's your take on this?
Great show, as usual, Mr. Yaffee.
Oh, thank you, sir.
I agree with the prior caller to an extent. Everybody trains for everything, and, it's training. When that moment hits you live, we can't call him a coward because I go to Universal Studios and I get on the line for the roller coaster, and I get on that roller coaster. And at the top of that roller coaster, it's about to go down. I'm like, oh, my God, what have I done? The blame, I think, goes with the Sheriff Israel. He actually signed documents knowing about this promise program. Eric Holder has the audacity to lecture us about anything. This is on Eric Holder's hands and Sheriff Israel. Don't report, and it makes the numbers look good. That's all. This poor guy got to live with this the rest of his life.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Great take on that. Let's take another call here. Let's go to Mike in Orlando. Mike, what's your take?
Hey, bud, 3 points real quick. The first one, Sheriff Israel and Peterson, both of those guys are morons. I mean, Jesus Christ, your last caller talking about you don't know what to do in that moment. That's what they're trained for. And if they can't do it, they should have never been brought on in the first place. Second point, this is exactly why teachers should be able to carry guns in schools. I know most of them are liberal Democrats and they're against that thing, but the ones that aren't should be able to carry a gun.
Yeah, as long as they're trained.
Trump and, well, whatever. They need to go through training, right? Isn't that the whole thing, the reason why they wouldn't know what to do in that situation? Well, look at this moron that went in there and didn't do anything. Third point.
I mean, you make a good
NFL
point.
with Trump.
Well, before you make that point, I just want to say you make a good point that this is proof that we can't rely on one school resource officer to be able to protect our students. Because they can't, either they're going to be a coward or they can't be at every place, at every place at the same time.
Right, and most of these school resource officers and cops have the physique of 300 pounds of chewed bubble gum, so that's another problem.
That's a little bit of a stereotype. I don't want to stereotype, but go ahead, Mike.
Right, and third point, Trump with the NFL and the Eagles. I mean, are we really talking about football still? Who cares? Football is the worst sport that you could ever watch. There's 7 minutes of action in 4 hours, and if you took the alcohol out of the stadiums, there'd be 3 people left watching, and it'd probably be the quarterback's parents. Boom.
Okay.
All right, cut his microphone. He doesn't know. All his other points don't mean anything anymore.
He hates football.
He's done.
I love watching football. I mean, he's right that when you boil it down, there is only like 7 minutes. Didn't they figure that out or something?
Yeah, it was somewhere around like 12, I think, something like that.
But it's the strategy behind it all and everything. I don't know. I should have asked if he likes soccer, because if he likes soccer, then he has no credibility, in my opinion. All right, let's take another call. Let's go to Edward in Orlando. Edward, what's your take on this?
My take is I travel around a lot with pipeline projects, and most of the people, not just trying to, anyway, most of the people I speak with, they think that Peterson did the right thing, especially when he is as old as he is. Whether he did it right or wrong, they feel like he did the right thing. And just one quick comment on President Trump. He's about to make history next week where others couldn't do it in 50 years. But look at all the people coming out of the woodwork, like Reagan's daughter and all that, wanting to demean the man. I give him credit, and I think it's going to be fantastic. And even ABC and CBS the other night on their news programs had to come out and say it's going to be one historic moment that we haven't seen in a long, long time.
You talking about the summit with North Korea?
Yes, sir.
All right, Edward. I appreciate your call. A lot of. I had a feeling this was going to be a topic, Scot Peterson, that was going to go both ways, that we would get both sides of the issue. But that's the beauty of this show. We'll take calls on both sides. So we have the Rush Morning Update coming up in just a minute, and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Good morning, Orlando. Tuesday morning here on the 50,000-watt front porch, where we update Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, this is Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning. March for Our Lives announces its next phase, and Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated 50 years ago. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
Well, we have a Supreme Court ruling on the case dealing with whether the baker had to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding. So we had to bring in our legal expert, attorney Jeff Kaufman, and he'll join us next.
And good Tuesday morning. It's 8:02 on News Radio 102.5. Survivors of the deadly South Florida school shooting are getting ready to take their anti-gun violence message across the U.S. The Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School students are launching a nationwide bus tour kicking off June 15th in Chicago. More than 50 stops are planned in 20 states, and students will hold a separate Florida tour with visits to every congressional district. March for Our Lives leader Cameron Kasky says real change comes from voting.
Too often, voting is shrugged off as nothing in our country. People don't do it. They don't educate themselves. So often, people will just vote for the letter in front of the name of the candidate.
The effort is aimed at encouraging young people to vote and identify candidates and politicians who are supporting the National Rifle Association. Students are calling their campaign March for Our Lives, Road to Change. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Another name is being added to the list of candidates running for Florida governor. Billionaire Jeff Green filed the papers to run on Friday. The Palm Beach real estate developer joins a crowded list of Democrats seeking the job. Green ran unsuccessfully for U.S. Senate in 2010. In the meantime, there are primaries in 8 states today. Voters will cast ballots in California, Alabama, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. The primaries determine candidates for November's national midterm elections, as well as a variety of statewide races. But the big story is in California. California has a so-called jungle primary, which means the top 2 candidates get on the November ballot no matter what party they're from. And there are concerns that there are so many Democrats running for office, the Democratic vote might get diluted. More than 20 people are running for governor. 50 years ago, the nation was left reeling after Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in Los Angeles. Peter Edelman, now a law professor at Georgetown University and a former Kennedy legislative assistant, says many people were relying on Kennedy to solve the country's problems.
The nation was very deeply divided about the war in Vietnam and also about issues of race in our country, and so many people thought that he would be nominated, could be elected, and that he would be the leader that we needed to move forward in our country.
Edelman worked with Kennedy from his campaign in 1964 through his time as a senator from 1965 until he was assassinated in 1968. Kennedy was shot shortly after he won the California Democratic primary on June 5, 1968. He died 25 hours after he was shot on June 6th. Kennedy's death was a shock to much of the nation, as they had just lost Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to an assassination just 2 months earlier.
And what's really interesting about that is, RFK, he made a speech right after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed in Indianapolis. And he was supposed to be there for a campaign event, but he actually went up and announced that Martin Luther King had been killed. And, in a lot of cities there was riots because of the death, but not there where he made that speech, which is really interesting.
He was one of the few politicians at a time when it just wasn't done who could reach across the aisle, both Democrat and Republican, as well as races. He could talk to working class families, white families. He could talk to working class African American families.
Yeah, I probably disagreed with a lot of his politics, but that whole story of him giving that speech in Indianapolis that day, I just thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I saw a clip of it. CBS Sunday Morning had done a piece about the 50th anniversary. And finally, this is a concerning story. 4 Florida communities are considered to be among the most vulnerable in the country when it comes to cybersecurity threats. The ranking is based on a survey by the Coronet cybersecurity firm. 7th on the list is Jacksonville. The West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce area is 8th. The Orlando-Daytona Beach community is the 9th most vulnerable metro area, and Tampa Bay is 10th. Part of the concern in Florida involves the large concentration of defense and financial services firms. WFLA News Time, it's 8:07. You can read about an Iraq War veteran saving a Wyoming trooper from a man attacking him. Get the details online at 1025WFLA.com. The third hour of Good Morning Orlando with Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, traffic. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
Yes, and this is Yaffee filling in for Bud. Bud will be back later this week. By the way, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Beyond Reason R. You can send me a friend request on Facebook as well. We have Deb giving you the news at the top and bottom of every hour. Paul is producing today, and Stephanie screening your calls at 407-916-5400. Earlier in the show, we talked about the Supreme Court ruling, who the Supreme Court sided with a Christian baker who had refused to make a wedding cake for a gay marriage. Went in a great deal about that in the 6 o'clock hour, but for this hour, I wanted to bring in our legal expert, attorney Jeff Kaufman. He's going to give his analysis on the case and what the future holds for situations like this, and we're going to get to that next. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA. So there are a lot of different opinions on the Supreme Court ruling dealing with a Christian baker who refused to make a wedding cake for a gay marriage in Colorado. Now, the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in favor of that Christian baker. And there's actually been a little bit of confusion as well about this, so I wanted to bring our legal expert, attorney Jeff Kaufman, on to give his take on it and kind of explain what this is all about. So, Jeff, I appreciate you joining me this morning.
Well, no problem at all. There is. I've been watching this storm of people who are upset and people who are happy, and they really don't understand what really happened.
All right, so tell us what really happened.
Well, this wasn't about. It could have been a gay person. It could have been a Catholic person. It could have been a black person. It could have been anybody.
Right.
The real issue here is how the law was enforced. So you had an issue of a baker saying, listen, you can buy anything from my store, but I shouldn't have to produce something special when it affects my religion.
Yeah, so like it would be like compelled speech almost.
Right. Basically, I mean, the difference would be, let's change the cake a little bit for you. Let's say it was a Trump cake. Let's say it was a abortion cake. Let's say it was a gay cake. Let's say it was anything.
Right.
Anything that one person might not want to do. But it really had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
That's the real joke behind it. Everyone's going, well, it's Gay Pride Month, so this set gay rights back. No, it basically defined everyone's rights. And this is what happens in court, believe it or not. A judge gets elected normally based on his political affiliation.
Yeah.
And we can agree with that.
Especially nowadays.
Yes. Like, it really depends on it. Like, all federal judges are absolutely elected based on their political affiliations. And when a new regime comes in, when it's Democrat or Republicans, they elect their own set of Republican judges. They elect their Democratic judges. The Supreme Court is basically actually split down right the middle based on their politics, which was cute because they all said it was unfair because the people on the commission were biased.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so the ruling wasn't even against...
No, had nothing to do with being gay.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with
discrimination or anything.
Nothing. It had to do with the way this commission said, listen, we have issues. We don't like that Christianity and religion is used to cause major issues like the Holocaust. They compared this baker to basically the Holocaust. And now normally people feel that way, but they're not dumb enough to say it.
Gotcha.
Like a judge very rarely will in the middle of it
yeah.
say, hey, listen, you know the reason why I don't like this? It's because I'm Catholic. They never say that. What they do is they have a bunch of clerks. These are either law students or people who just graduated law school who are great writers. And they go, listen, I feel this way, but you need to give me a legal reason why I feel this way, and we're going to write this thing up. Like, do you actually believe that the Supreme Court justices write their own legal briefs?
I guess not. I mean, I used to believe that, but
no, listen, I love you, but it's a delusion. What happens is each one has 3 to 5 law students or recent graduates from Harvard, Yale, and everything else. These were the best writers possible, and they write these. He goes, in my opinion, you didn't write your opinion, dude. 5 law students wrote your opinion.
Interesting.
So these guys aren't even writing it, but they'll go like this. Let's say I'm against gay marriage, and I'm not. But let's say I was. And I said, okay, I can't say that, but let's go write it, go find me some case law to make it look like I actually basing this on law, not my own feelings. And that's what they did in this case. Like, you had the 2 dissenting people who claimed that the reason they voted against it was because it's not fair to use people's reason for doing it against them. Now, both those 2 would have failed their bar exams if they would have wrote those answers that way.
Go explain that.
They would not be lawyers today if that was a question on their bar exam. The bar exam says this: are you allowed to put your personal opinions and your feelings and write it down? No, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to have your personal biases come into play.
But they do it all the time, it sounds like.
That's the biggest joke in the world. They just ruled that that this law and what happened to these people, what happened to this baker, was unconstitutional because these people were biased. Each one of them has their job because they were biased.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's the weirdest thing when you're dealing with this, trying to figure out what's going on. Now, the real problem you have is this. The issue is that for everyone who knows, when you pass a law or do something else like that, and it's based on race, religion, or certain other protected areas, there are certain tests that you have to satisfy. Now, for example, sexual orientation is basically the lowest test. It's called the rational basis test, which means the law just has to be rationally based. In comparison to, let's say, religion, which is strict scrutiny, which means absolutely this was the only thing you could have done.
Okay.
And in this case, sexual orientation is really the lowest protected area. Now, you'd be surprised that freedom of religion, when combating sexual orientation, is actually considered less.
Huh.
And it's just because of right now, certain states and certain federal governments are really upset over the issue of discrimination. So they will literally knock down your rights to support that. I mean, one of the questions you have to ask this question is this. Let's say this baker was in downtown Brooklyn.
Okay.
Let's bake this in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And let's say this baker didn't want to make a fetus cake.
Yeah, okay.
For somebody who was not pro-choice or pro-life. Let's say somebody who's pro-life wanted an abortion cake, and the baker goes, "No, I'm not doing this."
Yeah.
Do you think we would be in the Supreme Court right now?
Probably not. I made the point as well that
Colorado is actually the first state that the reason why gay orientation you deal with now is they actually had a law against it in 1996, and that's why it's the rational basis test and not any higher, which is cute.
I mean, I made the example as well. I can imagine an atheist cake shop owner not wanting to make a Christian cake. And that probably, I don't know if that would get the same attention or not.
Now, the big difference is this is a private entity.
Right.
Okay, this isn't a government. This isn't like the Kentucky clerk who refused to issue gay marriage certificates. It was her job to issue certificates for the government, and she made a promise to do that and put her issues to the side. She doesn't get to claim religious freedom when it's your duty to do something. Now, as a private citizen, let's say I want to paint. I'm a painter. And you want me to paint something for you. You go, hey, listen, I want you to paint me, but I'm going to be in my Nazi Germany uniform.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're out of your mind. I'm not doing this. Now, the question is, could he sue me for it because I'm discriminating against, let's say, his nationality? Or they'd say, well, I'm from Germany and I believe in this. And I'm not saying Germans believe in Nazis. I'm just saying, but let's say let's say he wanted to do that. How far do you think it would go?
Yeah, not very far.
And I promise you the judge that ruled on it wouldn't go out like the Colorado Commission. These commissioners got on their soapboxes. They couldn't wait to get the press they wanted, even though they had a feeling that this would be appealed because they didn't care. We're going to tell you, I feel this way.
Attention.
It was all attention. A judge will very rarely let you know his own personal feelings because he knows that case will get appealed and it'll be turned over. And this is what happened. It got turned because of these people's comments and actions. If they didn't say a word about it, this baker would have been in trouble.
Huh.
And that's the sad part about it, because in our country of contract law, for example, you can't be forced to do an action. Let's say you say, I'm going to paint your house for $500, and I don't paint the house. And a judge can't make me paint the house. He can make me pay you back the money.
Right.
But he can't make me paint the house.
So you think if the Colorado Civil Rights Commission did not act biasly, you think the Supreme Court...
If they didn't say they were acting
Right.
biasly. There's a big difference. These idiots got up there and opened their mouth and goes, hey, the reason why I like this is because Christians are the reason why we're all screwed up.
Yeah.
If they would have kept their biases to themselves like most judges do and most people do, then they would have been fine. They
Really?
would have
So
got
you
away
think-
with this.
You think the Supreme Court would have not ruled in favor of the baker?
Exactly.
Even though you think maybe they should have anyway.
Oh, I think you can't. The idea of forcing people to do things that they're disgusted by is wrong. Now that this guy has an issue with gay people, that's his option. But he's a private individual,
right?
And to force him to create something, and this is not like, hey, I baked a cake for you. This is I have to make. This is a
he
process.
He even offered you can have other
Yes.
cakes in the restaurant.
Yes, but
or
I don't
in the
want to
shop.
have to make it for you. I don't want
Right.
to have to create. I don't want to have to create this piece of what I
Gotcha.
consider art for you. And there's a fine line between offering services and offer art. Put it this way, and that's
Gotcha.
what this guy was holding his hat on. And the reason why courts rule this way is because people will always use this as an excuse to defend their
right.
Let's say prejudice or their right to do that. I'm not serving black people, not because I hate black people, because it's my religious issues.
Yeah.
That's what somebody will say. And that's what they have used in the past. They have defended discrimination on religious purposes. And that's the fear of what happens in a courtroom.
But-
And there's really very little you can do to prove that it's the real reason he feels this way.
Gotcha. All right. Definitely want to talk to you more. We're late for a break, so we're going to take a break, and we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So we only have a couple of minutes here, but I had to ask Attorney Jeff Kaufman his opinion on something else that's going on in the news today, and that's President Trump tweeting out that the Mueller probe is unconstitutional. What do you think about that? Is it unconstitutional?
When it comes to this process wasn't meant to take down a president. The process to take down a president is called an impeachment.
Right.
And there's a specific process to do this. The idea of this special counsel being set up, this special counsel was to see whether Russia screwed with our elections. And not just that they bought Facebook ads, but that there was collusion, there was a bunch of stuff. The fear was, when this came out, that they somehow hacked our election process. And I'm not talking through Facebook. I'm talking to actual hack the election.
Right.
And there's no proof of that. And the problem is that it became a political witch hunt to go after anybody and everybody who Trump is associated with. And that's what's been happening, because you look at all the different things that have happened through this election. And these were people who were sending texts to each other. Let's get them. And you had everything possible to show that this committee, the lawyers on this committee, goes, well, he got elected, so let's go after him anyway. And Trump brings some stuff on himself. I mean, that's a given. He wakes up every morning, he figures out a way to tweet to upset a bunch of people.
Right.
He passes a bunch of bills, and the day starts over again. And this cycle of making people crazy while he does his job, and he's good at that. Until something changes, this is a very effective way for him to pass and do what he wants to do, because it's a magic trick.
Right. Yep.
I mean, it's the greatest magic trick I've ever seen in the history of...
I agree with that completely.
Okay, let me think. At 4 o'clock in the morning, let's come up with something crazy to make the press go after this, because the press doesn't want to talk about the executive orders I'm doing, because that's boring.
Yep.
I mean, the first day they decided ratings would be involved in news. They're asking for this one.
Gotcha.
Now, dealing with his impeachment, he can pardon himself.
He can.
He can. There's nothing against it. There is not a single law, a case, or anything else that says he can't do it. Now, until the Supreme Court later comes around and says that, the fact is this: once you're pardoned, you're pardoned. I mean, look who you get a pardon. For example, every president has pardoned his buddies. Every president has gone out of his way to hook up his friends, to take care of the people who donated money and everything else. I'm not talking the political prisoners. I'm talking, for example, like the riches who own the chicken place.
So if they wanted to prevent him from pardoning himself, they would either have to impeach him or take it to the Supreme Court, have the Supreme Court rule on it, or
I don't even think they can. I can't even think they can go to the Supreme Court before he does it. And after he does it, it's moot.
So they would have to pass a constitutional amendment.
They would have to change basically the Constitution of his executive powers. And he's not going to sign that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right, Attorney Jeff Kaufman, a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of different aspects to everything we've been talking about. I really appreciate you coming on with us. And you'll be on tomorrow as well for your Legal Briefs segment with Deborah Roberts and taking questions from our audience on any legal questions. So that'll be fun, too.
I'm looking at Deborah right now, is looking at my ears going, is he got my headphones on? And the answer is yes, I do.
Oh, no, actually, I didn't even realize that. I was just going to look over there and just tell you that we've already got listeners who are texting in questions for our Legal Brief segment that doesn't really take place until tomorrow morning at 8:40. But when they hear you're going to be on the 50,000-watt front porch, they just start texting their questions.
I hear that's the way it works around here.
All right, so thank you so much for coming on, Jeff. I really appreciate it. And
now give me back my headphones.
You got it.
Deb's going to update the latest news. It's 8:32 on Good Morning Orlando. Deborah Roberts joining me in the studio once again has the latest news for us. Good morning, Deb. How are you this morning?
I'm hanging in there. How are you?
Pretty good. I mean, during the break, we were still talking with Attorney Jeff Kaufman. I mean, he knows his stuff. He knows his stuff. Yeah.
He knows his stuff. So again, if you plan to be here tomorrow morning at 8:40, and of course you do, because where else would you be? For our Legal Brief segment, as I mentioned earlier, we did have a listener who texted us to 23680. Standard message and data rates do apply, but we're going to, of course, continue to touch on the big stories making the news with Attorney Jeff Kaufman tomorrow. What we really want to do is offer his legal expertise to you, the listeners.
Right.
It's a great opportunity to get some free advice from the only attorney in the country who is licensed to practice in 18 states. In fact, they shut down the rules so someone else couldn't follow Jeff Kaufman's lead.
Yeah, that's amazing. That really is. So that's tomorrow at 8:40 a.m.
Yes, tomorrow at 8:40. Be here for Legal Briefs.
All right, so what else do you have for us?
Well, March for Our Lives leader Cameron Caskey announced their new summer program called Road to Change.
A 2-month summer tour around the country where we will go from city to city, state to state, and connect with community to community, making sure we are going to harness and energy the passion we witnessed on March 24th and turn it into action.
Caskey of the anti-gun violence effort announced the next phase of the movement starting June 15th in Chicago. The students will be going on a coast-to-coast bus tour this summer, encouraging young people to register to vote. They're planning about 50 stops in more than 20 states, along with a separate tour here in Florida that will make stops in all 27 congressional districts. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. A black bear has been safely removed from a Fort Myers neighborhood after it was spotted on the loose Monday morning. Authorities went around the city chasing down the bear for hours until they finally captured it. John Skeens says he opened up his apartment door and, oh, wow, look at that. It's a bear. Literally right outside of his apartment door. He says he thinks the bear was hungry and looking for something to eat because there's a dumpster on his street. No need to go dumpster diving for this bear. They gave him waffles and syrup.
Really? They just fed him breakfast, huh?
Apparently, yeah. Normally FWC uses donuts as a lure, but there was something about this.
I didn't know that. They use donuts?
They use donuts, which I know a lot of people here in the building that could be lured by donuts. And also by waffles and syrup.
Yeah, it's true. We were trying to catch the bear, and we caught you. No.
We caught you some waffles, some good old maple syrup. And finally, a Florida couple says their patio furniture was rearranged by a decorative alligator. Mary Charbonneau, found her patio furniture gathered at the front door. Now, when she asked her husband, Mike, if he had moved it to mow the lawn, he said no. So the couple reviewed their home security footage only to reveal that a large alligator was the culprit. Did not like the feng shui of the way the patio furniture was set up.
Yeah.
The footage shows
it's got to be a certain way to this alligator.
They really did.
Yeah.
You know, the chair should be over here.
He's a little OCD, the alligator.
He very much was. And the footage shows the alligator with one of the chairs stuck to its head as it thrashes around until the chair falls off. Alligators are pretty common in that area, which has many ponds.
Yeah. All right. So there you go.
Waffles and syrup and decorating alligators.
Maybe the alligator wanted some waffles and syrup.
Yeah, exactly. Probably.
It's a little upset. Rearrange the furniture to send a message. All right, Deb, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, and you'll be on with us again tomorrow morning as usual.
Yes, I will.
All right, so next we have Sound Judgment. The Sound Judgment game, you can win tickets to see the Beach Boys. I know we have a lot of fans of the Beach Boys here listening to the show right now, so if you want to win those tickets, call 407-916-5400, 407-916-5400 for your chance to win as we play the Sound Judgment game. We have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So it is time now to play Sound Judgment here on Good Morning Orlando. And before we get to the game, we have Stephanie who's going to tell us what you can win.
That's right, Yaffee. So today we have a pair of tickets to see the Beach Boys at the Dr. Phillips Center. Tickets go on sale this Friday, June 8th at 10 a.m. Buy them at Dr. Phillips Center box office or online at drphillipscenter.org.
407-916-5400 if you want to call for your chance to play. So, being a cat lover, I had to share this story with you. This week, a British cat celebrated his birthday and is being hailed as the world's oldest cat, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. The cat's name is Ruble. I want you to listen to some sound from the Fox News report on this. Then use your sound judgment to tell me how old is this cat. Here it is.
The cat named Rubble takes the crown at the same age as the previous record holder who lived in Texas. Rubble's pet mom says he's a lovely cat, although he's gotten a bit grumpy in his old age. The Guinness Book of World Records says the grand title, however, goes to another British cat named Cream Puff, who died in 2005.
So how old is this cat? Right now, the world's oldest cat, somewhere in Britain, Guinness Book of World Records has it as the oldest cat. How old is this cat right now? 407-916-5400. Let's go to line one. Line one, take a guess on how old this cat is.
Hey, good morning. I'm going to guess 38.
No, that is not right. A little bit lower than that. It's not 38. Let's go to line two. Line two, how old is this cat?
32.
Oh, close, but not quite that old. 407-916-5400. Let's go to line three. Line three, how old is this cat?
I think he's 30 years old.
30 is right. 30 years old. Now, apparently, the world record holder that it said at the end of that report for the oldest cat ever was 38. But that cat is no longer alive. This cat is the oldest cat living now, and he is 30 years old.
Yeah.
That's
all three of mine only come up to 25.
25? 25 is pretty up there. I mean,
no, I have to add up to all three of their ages.
Oh, I see. I gotcha. Yeah, I mean, my parents had a cat. We had a cat growing up, and it lived to 22, I think. I mean,
Wow.
that was pretty old for a cat, but 30, that's pretty old. That is quite something. So, what's your name? Where are you calling from today?
Mary from Deltona.
Mary from Deltona. So, can you take a guess on how many years that is in cat years?
Oh, my goodness. He must be hitting close to 200.
It's 137
Oh, my.
in cat years. That's one old cat. All right, I'm going to put you on hold, and Steph's going to tell you how you can get those tickets to see the Beach Boys, all right?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations on that.
Another happy contest winner on WFLA.
So we have a special announcement coming from iHeartRadio, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. And, of course, we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. You know, Jeff Kaufman was right about one thing. Trump does know how to get up in the morning, tweet something out, and make himself the center of attention in the news.
I was just thinking that with what you just read. I was like, so why doesn't he just go to the IG and ask him? Why is he asking Twitter?
Well, do you realize that he could declassify
exactly? That's my point.
Everything today.
Yeah, there's no question about what's taking so long, and I hope they're not cooking up the books. Like, just go do it then.
Yeah, he could the whole FBI thing with the informant. He could declassify all of it today. But he knows this is a winning issue for him. And also, that is true with the national anthem protests and the NFL. So he tweeted out yesterday, the Philadelphia Eagles football team was invited to the White House. Unfortunately, only a small number of players decided to come, and we canceled the event. Staying in the locker room for the playing of our national anthem is as disrespectful to our country as kneeling. Sorry. So, I mean, there's a part of me that understands, if we're going to make sports political, let's just forget about it. If we're going to make that another divisive issue in this country. But somebody else reported that none of the Eagles kneeled.
None of them. Not
a single Eagles player last year kneeled. Now, some of them did do the Black Power salute, I believe, but none of them kneeled.
I think this was more about the fact that there was a small number of them coming.
Yeah.
And Trump didn't want to look embarrassed with just a few Eagles there instead of the whole team, so he canceled the whole thing.
Well, I mean, I'll say this.
Because it's bad optics.
I'll say this. It's a smart political move for him to do that. If there was going to be all these people not showing up because they don't like the president, he can come out now and say, you know what, forget it. I'm canceling it. I don't blame him for that. But it was just very interesting that he's coming out making this about the national anthem again. He's calling out the NFL saying they didn't go far enough. And all of this is because he's trying to once again gin up the culture war because he knows it's a winning issue with his base. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I agree with him. I don't like the players kneeling for the national anthem either. What else did he tweet out this morning? He tweeted out.
What didn't he tweet this morning?
He went on a tweet storm this morning. 8 tweets in like a matter of minutes is pretty interesting. Let's see. He says, let's see. He says, we have had many championships teams recently at the White House, including the Chicago Cubs, Houston Astros, Pittsburgh Penguins, New England Patriots, Alabama and Clemson national champions, and many others. National anthem and more great music today at 3. So now they're actually going to play the national anthem today at 3 instead of having the NFL players there. Just he is trolling the media and the left so much. It's actually kind of funny. So we have a special announcement coming up in just a sec from iHeartRadio that you will definitely want to pay attention to. And we'll get to that, as I said, in just a sec. But I'll end the show just like Bud does. God bless you, and God bless America. Catch you guys next time.